Hey, Joe, great to see you again. Glad we're here at another Scuba Decompression session. Nice to see you.
It's good to be seen. It's an honor and privilege to be here.
And today happens to be the 7th of June, which is a significant day in history because it was the day that the Allies landed in Normandy Beach and other beaches on the coast of France in, what was it, 1944, 43, 44? Yeah.
Yes.
So, and it's kind of interesting to use that as an orientation point because today our topic of conversation from a business perspective is this concept of points of friction. Okay, where is it that at you as a business owner, when you're communicating and you're dealing with your client base, your service providers or suppliers and things like that, where might you find a scenario that is not where the mutual objective is not easily perceived and to be attained? It can be, and it should be, but things occur that that cause friction, and we're going to talk about that today. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's typically falls into the realm of your customer service department, where they kind of identify that friction and try to resolve the issues whether it's a process issue or a process issue.
Yeah, a process issue or a process issue. Yeah.
Well, there are no people problems. There's only process problems, right?
Yeah.
So what's the process breakdown? So it's identifying that and that point of friction and moving that forward and resolving it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right when you say the majority of that sort of thing occurs at the time in the customer service side after you have engaged with them. There are points of friction that can occur in the sales process where you need to get information to someone and you haven't done it yet, or there's a member of the prospective customer's team that is pushing back on something that you haven't explained right, or whatever. There are those points of friction too, but you're going to see it more frequently and probably with a greater amount of energy, all right, on the customer side than you will on the sales side.
Typically in the implementation or post sale aspect of things.
Yeah. Well, let's get into some things because we've prepared some informational slides, and let's use that to discuss this topic a little bit because this is a good one for our customers, and that is this idea of finding your points of friction. And what we've wanted to let everybody know is that we collected a lot of information, and there was a study that was done in 2022, Achieving Customer Amazement study that's done by Shepard Heiken, and so this information dovetails so nicely to everything that you talk about and you've learned over your experience as a mentor. So just want to let everybody know that some of these numbers and statistics come from that source. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so one of the first things that I thought was kind of interesting, that for customers, he mentions that convenience is more important than a friendly experience. That surprised me initially, but then I started to think about my own situation, and I realized that the easier it was for me to interact with the company that I wanted to deal with, the convenience factor, the bigger, the easier that was for me, then the more likely I was going to be to actually do something, even though the person I was talking to might not have been as jovial.
Yes. I mean, well, you think about it, especially with the e-commerce move, Amazon makes it easy to buy.
Yeah.
If it's easy to buy, that's convenient. If
Right.
you make it hard to buy, then people are going to go away. So convenience, allowing people to buy in the most convenient manner and the way they want to buy.
Right. Cool. So that takes us then to the next point of information, which says is friction is the opposite of convenience.
Yep.
That's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So anything that makes it more difficult or harder to interact or do business with someone, then that's going to cause the customer to be irritated. Yeah.
Yes. Well, the one that pops into my mind, if I have to log in and give my email to somebody to go buy something, I don't do it, or it puts up a friction.
Right.
So in your business, where are the friction points and how do we eliminate them in the process?
Got it. Okay, let's take a look at some of these specific points. They mentioned it, and this again comes from the survey, these specific 10 points, but bad policies is one, and we could talk for weeks on bad policies. Let me run through these, Joe, and then you can speak to them. Making customers wait.
Yep.
Inconsistent information, that's a big one.
Yep.
Duplicate paperwork. Oh my God, I've had to deal with that multiple times in multiple places. The government is programs are really big on duplicate paperwork. Poorly trained employees, that's like a pet peeve from our perspective.
Absolutely.
Cumbersome technology, I get that. A broken anything that's not working the way it's supposed to be working. Not being able to talk to a person. This is one of those things that frustrates me. We had a situation with a supplier, that, as you well know, a prospective supplier for a service that brainSHARE is using, that would not communicate directly with us. You know, we could not speak to a human unless and until we committed to making a purchase. And that was like very strange to me. And we didn't do business with that company. Bad customer experience design. In other words, the way that you are engineering your processes and your activities just don't work for the real world. And finally, anything that wastes the customer's time. So what do you think of this list of 10?
Well, when I look at that, it looks like 9 of them are processes, are process oriented.
Mm-hmm.
People don't spend enough time looking at what are the bad policies. Well, guess what? That's a process issue because you've got to put your policies in your process. Specifically to be an escalation process, making customers wait. You know, you haven't done any actual testing. It's fun because when I'm working with my clients, they'll put something in place and I'll go test it. And I'll say, hey, it's broken. What? They don't even know it.
Yeah.
So testing your processes before you release them to your customers is a critical step, because if you're not putting, your process, how do you know they work? Theoretically, they work, but in my experience, 80% of the time when you put a new process in place, it doesn't work the way you think it is.
Yeah.
So you've got to review your processes and test them on a regular basis.
This takes me to the question of, if you look at this list or the concept in general of points of friction, how do you know where the points are? What does the business need to do? What does the business owner need to do, and or the personnel in the company need to do in order to identify and recognize a point of friction so that some action can be taken?
So one is test the process yourself. Call up your own company and act like you're going to buy. Test the process yourself. Go buy something from your own company and see what that experience is. If you wouldn't buy from yourself, nobody else is either.
Yeah, that's true.
So test the process yourself. And then the second one is your customer feedback. You've got to be looking at your customer feedback. And if you don't have a process to get customer feedback, put one in place. It can be as simple as just doing a quick follow-up. Hey, how did the process go? And doing some type of survey. You should be surveying your clients and your non-clients. People that didn't buy from you, why didn't they buy? That's extremely valuable information.
What about the information that's collected by the frontline personnel?
They're the ones that know what's going on. Dave Packard told me, the frontline people, give them the tools and systems that they need to fix the problems. They know what the problems are. You don't when you're sitting back in the back office.
Mm,
They're the ones that will tell you what the problems are and how to fix
makes sense. Cool. All right. Well, let's get back to taking a look at what we were discussing here, because when you think about these 10 things, and you had mentioned that the vast majority of them, 9 out of the 10 of them, really tied to this question of processes. And so that brings us to the question of how to eliminate the points of friction. And that first one jumps right out: have a clearly defined process. So when you say clearly defined process, what does that mean?
So you got your different level of processes that we cover in our standards and
Fundamentals course?
fundamentals
Yeah.
course. But it's like, okay, somebody calls in, what happens next? What happens next? What happens next? What happens next? And walk through that entire process, and that needs to be documented. Where do you go to find the status of something that's being updated? If you're looking for a status update in 2 different places, guess what? You're going to get 2 different answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that a lot. Oh, well, I'm looking at my internal system. I'm looking at my internal billing system. Oh, I'm looking at QuickBooks. You're going to get 2 different answers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm looking at the shipping documents versus I'm looking at the order documents. 2
Mm-hmm.
different answers.
Mm-hmm.
So the process needs to be consistent on where the primary information resides,
Mm-hmm.
and how that walks through the entire process. What I see a lot of is there's no escalation process.
Mm.
When I'm talking to somebody or communicating with somebody and I'm not happy with the answer, I want it escalated. I want to talk to somebody that can actually make a decision to change something.
Mm-hmm.
And that when you don't have that, that irritates me, and it irritates your clients.
So is that, from your experience at interacting with the thousands of companies that you've worked with over the years, is that lack of an escalation process a common problem?
Very common. And it's even when there is a process, if the customer service reps aren't trained on how to escalate, then so that's a training process.
Got it.
So I remember one time I said, hey, I want to escalate this to a manager. We don't have one. I'm like, oh, yes, you do. And I sent a letter to the CEO. Guess what? I got a call back. Somebody in that company wants to know when things aren't working.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I mean, I want to know if things are working in my company and in my clients' companies. They want to know. Somebody wants to know. We just when they're looking at the process, they don't make it easy to make sure that information is getting to the people that can change the process.
And I think one of the things that's important for people to recall or think about when we're discussing this is something that we address in the customer service course that's we're working on it, and that is the likelihood that somebody will say, "The heck with these people! I'm taking my business someplace else because of this kind of situation."
What was it? It's 68%. Well, as you go through that number, almost 90% of people leave where they're doing business because of some kind of customer service issue, or they just don't feel like you care.
Right.
And to me, you know what? That is such an easy thing to train.
Yeah. You can solve that problem. Yeah.
That's a training issue. And when you do your training, you've got to do role playing.
That takes us to the second point of how to eliminate the point of friction, which is to train your team.
Yes.
Now, when we talk about training, what kind of training are we talking about? Because there's training about how a product works. There's training about how to send whatever. There's just different levels of training.
There's technical training, and then there's soft skills training.
Right.
This, I'm talking about soft skills.
Okay.
The soft skills is showing empathy, EQ, emotional intelligence. How do we actually incorporate that in? That's DISC training, VAC training, showing empathy and understanding, and then saying, hey, we are here to help, and then setting the boundaries. I remember one time I said, well, what can I do to fix this? Give me $1 million. Well, that's not going to happen. But
Right.
what I really, in training that we do is we try not to say no, or we can't do that. What we try to say is, here's what we can do,
Mm-hmm.
or here's what we're willing to do, or
Mm-hmm.
we can escalate this way. So
Mm.
we'll always try to keep it in a positive modality, and then do the training. When I do the training, that means the role play. There's
Mm-hmm.
usually only 5 objections or 5 major issues that any company has.
Mm-hmm.
And learning how to address those 5 issues is the key to bringing a client from unhappy to satisfied or even ecstatic.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting about that is you don't necessarily have to give the customer the thing that they're saying they are demanding as the solution to their problem. If you are engaging with them and logically and with empathy about their situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, oh, the order's in process. We're going to expedite that for you. I mean, some of the best training in the world is delivering happiness with Zappos. They were,
Oh, yeah.
when it comes to customer service, Zappos, and they gave their frontline people authority to make those decisions.
There you go. Authority, having the authority to make a decision. That's critical for
Yeah,
sure.
it is. Give them the authority, the guidelines, and then have an escalation process.
Got it.
I'll give you an example. Is I just was replacing my car cover on my car.
Oh, yeah.
And I called them up and I said, hey, I'm not sure which one to pick. I'm not happy because, my last one, it only lasted 3 years. And they said, well, that's got a 5-year warranty. Send us a picture of it and we'll send you a new one.
Wow.
Exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
Because I was ready to put out money. And then guess what? I'm going to be leaving a review for them, telling them they're great because they exceeded my expectations.
Makes sense. Very cool. Well, that takes us then to taking a look at the last element here we talked about, which is over communicate. When you say, now, this is an interesting turn of phrase, over communicate, because sometimes people, when they think about over communicating, they're thinking about the individual who never shuts up and is constantly talking and is yabbering about nonsense. But that's not what we're talking about here when we say over communicate.
Not at all. What we're talking about is status updates. All anger is caused by missed expectations. So, for example, when they said they're actually making a car cover for me, they said it's going to be 7 to 10 days to make it. We'll put it in the mail. You're in California. It'll take 3 to 4 days to get there. Okay. My expectations are set. Right. Now, if they don't hit that, I'm going to be grumpy, right? Yeah. Yeah. Now, if they hit that or even exceed it, I'm going to be ecstatic. Right. So now, if there's a problem in that, creating that, and they let me know before the due date, hey, we ran into a problem. We have a materials issue. We have a supply chain issue. That's a whole lot better than not telling me anything and waiting for 3 days. Oh, we didn't want to bother you. I hear that. Well, we don't want to bother. Guess what? You cannot if you gave me a status update every day, it's easy to delete messages. Right. But an email, a text, or whatever. Hey, here's where we're at. Here's where we're at. That just makes me feel warm and fuzzy. That makes me think a little bit more about what occurred, and so a certain degree is still occurring when we were running into these substantial supply chain challenges 6 months, 8 months ago. All right. Yes. And a lot of businesses were like, oh gosh, I can't, what do I can't, and they weren't telling people anything. Exactly. And that's what causes the friction, is not knowing. Yeah. If they know, then they can put together contingency plans. Hey, if I'm waiting for a new window to build a house and I don't get that window, everything else is right. But if I know, maybe I can adjust my project plan. Yeah. I can adjust things if I know. But if I don't, not knowing is a whole lot worse than knowing and allowing people to adjust for it.
Right. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you will lose the business.
You will probably increase your credibility with them because everyone understands stuff happens.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah. Very cool.
Excuse me, I sneezed there, Dave.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, listen,
I hope
this
I
is,
muted it.
you did. You did indeed.
But-
Yeah.
And I can't overemphasize that over communication, regular updates, and if something's going to miss a timeline, let them know. And then when you get done, hey, ask them how you did.
Right.
That's the other thing. That's all part of our process.
And what all of this means is it leads to customer satisfaction. And this is what you're looking for. You're looking for the happy customers giving you the 5-star rating because of your business. And what we're talking about here is that element of reducing points of friction, communicating expectations so that your customers know what it is that's going to happen, and meeting or exceeding the expectations you set. So you're better off under promising and over delivering than you are over promising and under delivering, right?
always. And that right there talks about, make sure that you're measuring your service, whether you're using NPS, net promoter score, or any type of customer satisfaction. They've all got their places, but make sure that you're getting some level of feedback, so that, because your processes will need to be changed and adjusted as the world evolves. So processes are not cast in stone. They need to be modified as things change.
Makes sense. Joe, we have to sign off. But hope that those folks, you team that's been participating with us on these school sessions, receive some positive from this. You know what to do. Take some action. If you have any questions or issues, reach on out. We've got the capability here to help you out. Send us. You can go online, find us on brainSHARE.online. And you've got our email addresses through all of the information on.
And the topic just says, schedule a call. Schedule some time and we'll dive into where you're at, where you want to go. And we're releasing the new customer service training course by the end of the month. So you'll sign up for that, and that customer service training course is going to be available.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you, Joe.